We talk endlessly about boomers, millennials, and Gen Z. But there's an entire generation in the middle that barely gets attention. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980, is often overlooked. They are the co-workers who get everything done without making a sound. They re the parents who raised you but never asked for credit. They built the internet, yet rarely post about their lives on social media. And here's what no one acknowledges. Their psychology is one of the most misunderstood of any generation alive. In this video, we'll dive into the traits that define Gen X, traits that make them unique and misunderstood, but incredibly resilient. Latchkey kids and independence. Generation X was the first generation of latchkey kids on a massive scale. By the late 1970s, millions of kids were unsupervised after school. At 8 years old, you came home to an empty house, no one around. You let yourself in, grabbed a snack, and waited for your parents to return. No smartphones to call for help, no cameras to check in. This independence taught them to rely on themselves at a very young age. It also taught them that consequences are immediate and real. You couldn't text your mom for advice or Google the right choice. You made decisions and lived with the results, no second chances. This experience rewired their brains to think ahead and prepare for outcomes. High contingency environment. Gen X grew up in an environment where actions and outcomes were directly connected. Their brains were wired to think 2, 3 steps ahead to avoid negative consequences. This high contingency environment taught them to always be prepared for what's next. It made them excellent at predicting problems before they hit. But this wasn't pessimism, it was survival. They learned that planning for the worst was often necessary. As a result, they developed the ability to see potential issues that others missed. This skill became a survival tool, built from years of constant uncertainty. They became great problem solvers, always ready for whatever life threw at them. This ability to anticipate challenges remains one of their most valuable traits. Watching their parents fail. Gen X watched their parents preach stability, commitment, and loyalty, but they also saw those same values unravel during the 70s and 80s. Divorce rates exploded and job security disappeared with corporate layoffs. Their parents worked hard, but promises of stability often proved empty. Gen X learned early on that the system could betray you. People will let you down, and promises are often meaningless. This led to the development of defensive pessimism, a planning for the worst. They hoped for the best, but they also braced for disappointment. It was a survival mechanism formed from years of watching their parents struggle. This worldview shaped Gen X's outlook, making them cautious yet resilient. Emotional armor and detachment. Gen X developed emotional armor to protect themselves from inevitable disappointment. This emotional detachment allowed them to survive in a world full of instability. They seem detached, but it's really a defense mechanism against pain. When things got hard, they learned not to attach too deeply. This self-preservation tactic helped them navigate their unpredictable environment. They do not wear their emotions on their sleeves. They guard them carefully. Their emotional resilience was forged from years of emotional neglect and uncertainty. Though they may appear distant, it's just a shield they've built to protect themselves. Their detachment is not about not caring. It's about avoiding future hurt. This emotional armor became a necessary tool for surviving their childhood. Privacy and social media. Gen X grew up when privacy was not just respected, it was expected. They remember a time when personal moments stayed private, not broadcasted. For them, sharing personal details on social media feels unnatural and unsafe. They understand technology, but choose not to expose their lives online. Broadcasting personal moments feels like giving up the privacy they grew up with. They value their space and prefer to keep their lives out of the public eye. To them, social media is risky, exposing them to potential judgment and vulnerability. While younger generations embrace it, Gen X chooses quiet observation over participation. Their reluctance to share is rooted in their understanding of the value of privacy. They learned early that the less people know about you, the safer you are. Irony and humor as protection. Gen X weaponized irony and humor as a way to protect themselves. Everything was a joke, nothing too serious, to avoid emotional attachment. They learned to keep things light even when life was heavy. Growing up during the Cold War, they were taught to hold contradictions. They learned to laugh rather than scream at the unpredictable world around them. Humor became a way to distance themselves from emotional pain. Attachment felt dangerous, so they kept a safe distance from everything. The irony was their shield against uncertainty, providing a way to cope. Laughing allowed them to feel control over a chaotic world. Gen X's ability to laugh at life's darkest moments became both a survival tool and a shield. Work ethic and competence. Gen X developed one of the strongest work ethics of any generation. They don't talk about it. They just show up and get the job done. From a young age, they were introduced to responsibility, often without guidance. They worked jobs like paper routes, bagging groceries, and fast food shifts. These were not resume builders, but lessons in hard work and responsibility. Gen X watched their parents give decades of loyalty to companies, only to be let go. This shaped their belief in personal competence over company loyalty. They learned early that they could not control layoffs, but they could control their value. Their obsession with being indispensable comes from the need to ensure job security. Gen X does not rely on titles. They rely on their own skill and competence, independence and collaboration. Gen X is the most independent generation, yet they are quietly collaborative. They learn to solve problems alone, but they also show up when needed. They never ask for help, having been trained to figure things out themselves. But when others need help, they step in without hesitation or drama. They form deep, lasting bonds with friends out of necessity and loyalty. Their friendships were built during childhood when parents were absent. Gen X learned early to rely on themselves, but they also know when to lend a hand. They are fiercely loyal to their inner circle, creating strong, trusted relationships. Their independence does not mean isolation. It means relying on themselves, not on others. They understand the value of collaboration but prefer to work alone when possible. Authority and respect. Gen X respects competence, not titles or authority for the sake of it. They will follow leaders who prove themselves through skill and knowledge. If you are in charge but lack competence, they have zero patience. They learn to question authority after watching failures from their parents' generation. Watergate, Iran-Contra, the AIDS crisis. These events taught them to distrust authority figures. They saw corporate failures, political corruption, and economic instability firsthand. They know that blind obedience to authority can lead to disaster. Gen X believes that respect must be earned, not automatically granted. They do not follow people based on titles. They follow them for their ability. This generation values competence over rank and authority. Economic trauma and multiple income streams. Gen X witnessed multiple economic crises throughout their lives. They saw recessions, layoffs, and the collapse of financial systems. They learned that nothing lasts and nothing is guaranteed. This economic trauma shaped their approach to money and security. Many in Gen X turn to multiple income streams for stability, not because they are entrepreneurial by nature, but because they learn to diversify. They know that relying on one job or company is risky. They've experienced the instability of corporate layoffs and economic downturns. So they build safety nets by creating streams of income outside traditional employment. This approach to finances is rooted in their desire for control and security. Generation X is often overlooked, but their resilience is unmatched. They survived an era of instability and learned to adapt without complaint. Their independence, work ethic, and ability to collaborate quietly are their strengths. They value competence over authority and have a deep understanding of self-reliance. Despite their emotional armor, they have forged strong, loyal relationships. Gen X may not seek recognition, but they are the glue holding things together. They understand the value of privacy and the dangers of oversharing. Their experiences shape them into the generation that quietly does the work. They are the bridge between the old world and the new, keeping everything intact. Generation X is the generation that makes things happen without expecting applause.